Today, I will take you on a time travel through the early cinema. I know this may look boring and old, but you will discover some really interesting facts in this interactive video. So if you are a media student or only a curious person about film and love everything about media, you need to know it wasn't easy beginning to do films. Without all this technology of these days, these pioneer men that I will talk about were revolutionary for making such advances without the resources we have today. So stop being lazy and thinking the media world is just filming and come learn some history to become a little smarter. (1878) Edward Muybridge. This English photographer, who for me was the guy who started the whole image movement thing, he used to have these revolutionary ideas that none of his friends had and made the photos move. Ed, as I like to call him, may not have been the creator of the video recorder itself, but led to a new era in the world of image projection. Trying to scientifically prove a theory, Leland Stanford, the guy who founded Stanford University, you can imagine how important this crazy guy was. Anyway, this guy wanted to prove to his magnet friends and to the world that when a horse galloped, at a certain point their four hooves would not be touching the ground. Stanford had the idea to call Ed, who was kind of famous at the time, to prove his theory was right. So he sponsored Ed's experiment with the help of his servant John D. Isaacs. Then, John and Ed did a lot of crazy experiments and they set the electric shutter off of the camera, which made the experiments much easier. They put 12 cameras side by side with a distance and time of shooting that they thought would be good, and voila! The horse in motion. Theory proven, and the birth of the first moving image ever. Okay, it's not quite a moving picture, but the sequence of the images gives you this idea, like those drawings that we do at the bottom of our notebooks. Because nobody believed in Muybridge, he invented the zoopraxiscope, a machine where the images had a realistic movement. This device influenced all the photographic and cinematographic development, as in the origin of the celluloid film still used today. It wasn't easy to transfer the photography to the zoopraxiscope. Ed needed to change the angle of the picture to make the sequence of images make sense. Congratulations, Ed, you were the one who kicked off the world of moving image. 1882, Etienne Jules Marey. This French guy was very important too because he invented the slow motion, since he was obsessed to see what was too quick for human eyes. So he invented the chronophotographer, the first portable camera and, in my opinion, the first filming camera ever. This camera was capable of producing 12 consecutive frames per second. Marey used rolls of paper instead of glass plates, and this made it possible to take as many as 40 frames at a time. Marey's revolving disc gun cameras achieved high speeds and much shorter intervals than Muybridge's method. Because of his invention, the doors for the cinematography could finally be opened. So, this guy deserves our respect. Well done, Jules. 1888, Louis Le Prince. I feel so sorry for this French guy, because while he was alive, nobody gave credit for his films, which were made 7 years before the appearance of the officially reported films. He made the first footage ever in Leeds, UK. This film still exists in a museum, and they allow only one person at a time to see the short film. Le Prince was presented to a double American patent with a single lens device that combined a cinematic camera with a projector. The patent for a single lens type, MK1, was refused in the USA. On October 14, 1888, Le Prince used an updated version, MK2, of his unique lens camera to film Roundhay Garden scene. Le Prince made a single lens camera shooting onto a strip of sensitized paper 90mm wide and 1.2 meters long. He exhibited his first films at a factory in Hunslet, Leeds and Oakwood Grange, but they were not distributed to the general public. Trying to patent his innovative camera and show the world his films, Louis mysteriously disappeared, and his body was never found. So I think he has to be mentioned as one of the pioneers of the cinematography, because he started what others just copied, improved, and maybe even killed him. In fact, everyone had a share of contribution to the evolution of cinema. Perhaps some stood out more than the others, like Thomas Edison and the brothers Lumiere. 1884. George Eastman. This very smart American made a breakthrough in the filming process when he had the acumen to create the film in a roll format, which allowed increasing the duration of the filming. In addition, he perfected these rollers, making those famous little holes on the side, but of course he didn't do it to make it look cute, but because it allowed the film to be unstable on the camera while it slipped. Before George invented this film roll, the film strip did not run continuously, so it was necessary to stop, expose for a fraction of a second, then move forward and repeat this action. Grasp, expose, forward. Grasp, expose, forward. What a hassle! In addition, George was the founder of Kodak and also founded the Eastman Dry Plate and Film Company in 1884 in the city of Rochester. Thank you for your insight, Mr. George. 1885 to 1906. Now, people, inventions, and inventors start to connect, and then all it comes is just happiness for the evolution of media. Thomas Edison and the Lumiere brothers played a key role in the outbreak of the film industry. To use George's films, the Lumiere brothers patented the first kinetoscope, an apparatus that allows recording a series of fixed snapshots in frames, creating the illusion of the movement that for a certain time occurs before a photographic lens, and then reproducing this movement, projecting the animated images on a screen or even on a wall. The first public appearance of a film was in 1985, and it was a cinematography shot where the employees of the Lumiere brothers factory left, exiting the factory. The films of the brothers had a strong influence on the popular culture of the time. The arrival of a train at La Ciotat station, the first film in cinema. Thomas Edison was one of the greatest inventors in the world. The guy was simply a genius. He wanted to do what was for the eye, just like what the phonograph was for the ear. Phonograph, for those who don't know, is that device from the time of your great-grandmother that played music. Or maybe your great-great-grandmother, it depends on your age. In my case, it's just my grandmother. And this interest was only spared in Edison because of our friend Ed. Do you remember him from the beginning? Ed went to Thomas' lab to pay a visit and showed his work to Thomas, which was pretty damn good, right? Then Thomas thought, I have to improve that idea. So he hired William Dixon, who developed the kinetoscope. This instrument allowed the individual viewing of moving images through a hole. The movies were made of 35mm film purchased from the Eastman Company, the Kodak guy, remember? Edison felt the need to invest in the projectors for an audience. A British man named Robert William Poe created a movie projector called Theatrical, but Thomas Edison, smart and enterprising, copies the idea and launches the Vitoscope. Thomas Edison continued to contribute to the evolution of cinema. Carmencita was the first woman to appear in front of an Edison motion picture camera. But Edison had many other films. In that first moment, cinematographic technology was limited to recording brief scenes of daily life. However, soon after, the first plots appeared that dealt with historical and sentimental themes. Unable to reproduce sound along with the image, the first views were recognized by the actors' exaggerated gestures and the use of live instrumental accompaniment. If they already had the technology to screech sound and film, why didn't they put it together? First, because they were all so impressed only by the fact of an image projection that the sound did not matter. Second, because the inventors were concerned about improving the quality of the image, the length of the film, the technical details of the recording, so the sound was just a detail, even because the silent films already entertained everyone and made them earn money just for being a movie. Lastly, there was the matter of language being offensive or inappropriate, and they did not have the technology yet to edit it if someone probably said "f***." Georges Méliès. He was the great creator of the cinema of spectacle and fantasy, taking the first step towards the creation of a language of fiction for the cinema that was lacking to the cinema of Lumiere. He had some crazy ideas but essential ways to change the world of cinema. His editing techniques were instrumental to the film's innovation. He popularized techniques like stop motion and was one of the first filmmakers to use multiple exposures, fast camera, image dissolutions, and color film. He was also a pioneer in the use of storyboards. Oh my god, this guy was incredible! One time, when Méliès was filming, his camera crashed, and soon after it started to work again. In that interval, he realized that the bus that was on the screen was replaced by a horse, just like magic. That is, by a technical error, it was discovered how to make a jump cut. So he had the idea of making films that, in addition to using this innovative technique of jump cuts, as in The Haunted Castle, he also introduced editing devices like fade in and fade out, overlapping dissolves, and stop-motion photography. Méliès changed the way of making movies, from a simple moving picture to a narrative. Despite being a guy who advanced a lot, he still had very theatrical ideas, and in none of his films did he change the angle of the camera. It was all in the same position. Even in some scenes, like the zoom of the moon for example, it would have been much easier to change the camera of place, but he changed the moon. But even so, he deserves our respect and we have to thank him a lot, because his creativity has inspired many filmmakers. He was literally a movie magician of the cinema. 1905, Edwin Stanton Porter. This important filmmaker was one of the first of the realistic narrative in the cinema. Porter was hired by the Thomas Edison Company, where he began to excel through his innovative ideas, which, as he said it himself, influenced by our dear friend Méliès. He took stock footage from the large Edison library and spliced them together with staged scenes to create fictional narrative. Porter was still stuck in the box mentality, constructing each shot as a complete scene. Temporal overlaps, where action is duplicated from one shot to the other, were common as in this opening shot, where the firemen all rushed down the pole, followed by a shot from the bottom of the pole before the firemen land. That is what we call today a flashback. He repeated this technique in the same film when he shows the drama inside the building, with the firemen saving the woman and then the same scene seen by another perspective on the outside. For us, it may seem poorly done, but for the audience at the time, it was a different way of seeing moving images. But the novelty would wear out, and when Porter realized it, he made an upcoming film with more precise cuts. Although each scene is still from an outlet, in this movie he can cut without using any fades or dissolves, and most importantly, without losing the sense of the scene. In that era, the most difficult thing was to synchronize the different takes without causing a contradiction of timing the scene exhibited for the viewers. But the film was kind of totally groundbreaking in several ways. It was the first to be filmed outdoors, first to be filmed in various venues, first to use double dolls for the actors, and pioneer in the use of camera movements in still and mid-shot. Cuts to show actions in parallel locations and use of the zoom. Guys, this was too advanced for that time, seriously. He kept the genre of western, like the shots that force a person to dance, the pursuits on horseback, and the final shooting. He did all of this with a lot of action, technique, and intrigued the audience, because he realized that the most important thing is not the scene, but the shot. D.W. Griffith. This American guy introduced profound innovations in the form of making movies, considered the creator of the cinematographic language. He was pushing cinema out of the primitive tableau mentality and into a multi-shot medium that we still use in these days. He was the first to dramatically use cut-in, parallel editing, suspense, and camera movement. His first cut-in was in Greaser's Gauntlet in 1908. In the scene, he moves from a median shot to a close-up to emphasize the couple's emotion in the scene. That was a damn of a new concept. He started making movies using multiple cameras so he could make a scene through what we call continuity editing. This cutting style maintains a sense of continuous space and time. With multiple camera setups being used, the 180-degree rule involved practice. Griffith, as well as contemporary, discovered that if you kept the camera on one side of the axis of action, as the imaginary line where the movements and eye lines occur, You can avoid continuity problems of confusing geography when cutting from one angle to another. He was also the first to use intercutting, the cutting between shots in different scenes in a parallel action. Nobody thought that this style would work and that the audience would be confused with parallel scenes. But Griffith remained confident about his style of making movies and made The Lonely Villa, where he intercalated the film in 3 different shots. Parallel editing, which is alternating 2 or more lines of action, and saving in the last minute, are 2 ways of building suspense in a movie. Griffith increasingly began to perfect himself with practice and began to establish a Hollywood movie standard with his film style. At that time, concepts such as establishing shots, reverse shots, matching eye lines, cutting on action, in other words, everything about continuity, started to be used by the filmmakers. In 1911, he began directing feature films, with his biggest hit, The Birth of a Nation, which was taken as the basis for the creation of the Hollywood film industry, the first worldwide blockbuster and the most expensive film at the time. It seems to be very annoying, but this guy was the first to bring that great style of film to the screens. And this guy created that, and to this day this style is used in movies. This guy has changed the pattern of comedy movies to great movies. I think thanks to him we can watch our Marvel movies. The truth is that we have had several geniuses who contributed to the evolution of cinema. From the first special effects like the execution of Mary Stuart, even techniques of cutting and gluing the frames of film rolls to give continuity, as in The Life of an American Fireman. The audience thought all of it was real, so this could already have been considered special effects and cuts of scene. That is, all these mentioned innovators tried to bring to the screens cuts, effects, scenarios, camera movements, camera angles, continuity in a way that is quite archaic for us, but thanks to them, we have this magical world of editing today.